to the American-German Business Club for inviting me here today. This is a wonderful opportunity, a wonderful venue, and the dinner was delightful, and I look forward to maybe talking with more of you afterwards. My basic plan today is to go through, first of all, why terrorism and the American presidency have a very interesting relationship, especially in the post-9/11 world, and then go on to what the capture, the apprehension of Bin Laden means for President Obama, or what it potentially meant, and then to move on to look at the so-called Osama bounce. And we'll look at some statistics and see what happened to this bounce, how big it was, how long it lasted, what does it mean. And then I'll be looking at some of the factors that determined why this bounce was the size it was, why it lasted for as long as it did and not longer or shorter. And then finally, we'll look ahead, which is in the far distance in American politics, to the election of 2012. So anything can happen in that time period, but we'll give a good first shot at trying to understand what's going to be happening. So first of all, the relationship between terrorism and the American presidency. Now, first of all, you see here the constitutional responsibilities laid out in Article 2 of the Constitution seem to give very clear authority for the presidency to at least be largely concerned with the issue of terrorism. The president is commander-in-chief and is supposed to be looking out for the safety and welfare of the constitutional order as a whole. What happens in the polls? This is a chart that, again, is going to be difficult to see in the back, but it looks at various Gallup job approval bounces that different presidents have received. The biggest one being after the September 11th attack, where George Bush received a 35-point bump that lasted for 105 weeks before he returned to where he was right before the attack. 105 weeks. So what usually happens is you get to an event, you see a jump like that, and then it trails off. And so the question is, how long of a tail? You don't see Obama's bounce on here. And that's because we have it really not registering in either category. It's about a 6-point bounce, and it lasts for about 2 weeks. It's actually rather remarkable that it is as small as it is and doesn't last for very long at all. It disappears almost instantly. Factors determining what's going on here in American politics, that even if you capture Osama Bin Laden and bring him to justice, whatever you interpret to mean by that, why doesn't it do you any good? So, 7 quick factors I'd like to talk about, and then we can certainly discuss these things at greater length. There were many on the left who were very much opposed to torture, to waterboarding, and we see here that those concerns have gone away with the actual shooting of Obama. There's not much outrage on left or right about the actual mission. And this one pokes fun a little bit at maybe the contradiction in those views. Thank goodness you shot him. Yeah, for a moment we thought you were waterboarding him. Their view is not too far from this one. The right wing, wow, they got Bin Laden. I have to give the president some credit. High five to George W. Bush. So not too much credit other than the first couple of compliments by people like Glenn Beck and others. William Crystal saying, you did the right thing, thank you, congratulations, and then the next day let's move on to attack you again. So the partisan lines are already mostly, I think there are many independents who would say, yes, it's worthy of just reveling in for a while. You see them out on the streets in New York and elsewhere. With regard to the independents, though, there have been some recent studies looking at the polarization within Congress. So are there good role models in politics for independents? Are there any people in the middle in elected office? And by and large, there aren't any. There are a decreasing number of people who are in the middle who would be capable of sort of leading independence one way or the other. So this importance of the mission, you might say it's been 10 years. Is it really as big of a deal as it was 1 or 3 years into that time after 9/11? And here we have a cartoonist who is emphasizing that Osama Bin Laden watching TV in this remote location, maybe it wasn't a cave, but is this someone who really angers us the way that he did 10 years ago? And here we have video game playing teenagers who may have to Google who Bin Laden is, as apparently many Americans did right after he was caught. For what went on at that moment, I think had something to do with why the bounce was not quite as significant as it would otherwise have been. The top 3 frames, the cartoonist is showing our special operations team flying in with a Pakistani soldier, not noticing. Flying in, bam, pow, whatever, they fly away, no one knows what's going on. The bottom 3 frames is about the explanation by the Obama White House afterwards. Our White House storytelling team, they come in, they trip over each other, make a noise, and it's a wreck. So there was a time for several days after the operation where it wasn't clear what the story was. Was he fighting back? Was his wife shielding him? Who was involved in the attack? And so there was some lack of clarity, some crosstalk, and that may have confused things. I titled this slide Foreign Policy Peculiarities. I don't want to judge one way or the other on this. I just want to point out some things that may have created a context where catching and killing Bin Laden may not have had the effect that it might otherwise have had. For Republicans and those who are right-leaning independents, there were some things earlier on in the administration that left a bad first impression. So some false steps with regard to the British-American relationship, sending back the bust of Winston Churchill, giving Prime Minister Gordon Brown a set of American DVDs that weren't even in the right format to be played in Britain. Then you have the issue of drone warfare, the Libya engagement, the war powers resolution running perhaps afoul of that. And you get a foreign policy that's rather difficult to identify. Then we got domestic policy concerns, in addition to perhaps some confusion, some lack of clarity with foreign policy. Yes, you can go ahead as president and say, yes, it's time to celebrate, we've got Bin Laden, re-elect me. But gasoline, although this would be relatively inexpensive by German standards. Yeah. Very expensive by American standards. Yes, exactly.
I hear it every day. Yeah. Just double it for sure.
Yeah. Right, it's essentially half of what it is here. Jobless claims, unemployment ticking up and staying up. So we've got perhaps a foreign policy success, but domestic policy, we've got now, if Obama runs a good campaign, which he's likely to, he's going to point out the foreign policy successes. And things like the Osama operation done by Obama and his team, boy, the longer I speak, I'm going to make more and more of these mistakes, is going to be one of these things that will come out in the campaign. But whether that will be important to the American people is going to be the real thing. Because just like when Bill Clinton ran for president, it's likely to be the economy stupid. Foreign policy, I think, is not on most Americans' minds right now. It's going to be the economy. What's happening with unemployment, jobs? Is this the new normal?